Every creative pursuit eventually leads back to itself. Now, if you ever found yourself maybe right now in a position where you are at a job that you don't like, especially the type that you have a lot of time to do nothing and the time seems like it's passing, infinitely slow. You look at the clock, 1 minute passed. You look again after 30 minutes, only 1 minute passed, and it gives you a lot of time to think. And you may think in those situations, I should be doing more with my life. I should be doing, what am I here wasting my time here? I have so much talent maybe for painting or sculpting or talking or whatever that it is such a waste of life to be here. And I wish that I would just get out of here, do these things that I'm talented about or interested in or whatever it may be, and then build a career out of that. And so, in a lot of ways, when we're thinking about these things, escaping kind of unfortunate circumstances, especially for the mind that are not stimulating, we're always thinking, yes, about the money that comes with it, but always through some avenue that is more interesting. Even starting a business is a much more sort of creative approach to solve the money problems. And in a lot of ways, you think to yourself, oh, my life would be great because I'll be the master of my time and I'll do things the way I want to do them, which by default involves a certain level of creativity because you choose how to spend your time, how to solve the problems in your in your business, all of these things. But all that to say that with all of these, there's always, when you think about them, there's always a sort of, not a question, but a connector of the future, which is sort of a so that I could. And I'll exemplify. It would be, I wish I could quit my job so that I could do something that's more interesting to me, so that I could make more money, so that I could buy all these things, so that I could be financially free. And usually it ends there for most people. It's like about this is, and then I could have the money and then I could do these things. And before I even get to my point here, I would say here that first of all, ambition, some people would say that is not good and that we shouldn't do it, but ambition is what will drive someone to do something. And so there always has to be a need to do these things. And so you are always going to have ambition. And I say this because obviously, I stop at the money there, and you may think, oh, he's going to say bad about wanting to make money. But no, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But that only makes sense, and we have to think about it, from the point that you now find yourself in. Because if that was the only point and it was to be financially free, then it wouldn't matter how you do it. If that was really the only thing. And for some, I would say few people, it is, but I don't think for most people it is. Because, excuse me here, when we look at it, it is not just about making money. It is not just about, because if you buying the cars, like eventually your V12 engine sports car just becomes your transportation vehicle, and your big fancy house just becomes your normal house, and your luxurious vacations just end up giving you more time in a lot of ways when you get to that point to be a bit more with your miserable thoughts and your thoughts of, now that I got it, that's it. I thought I was going to feel complete, because that's what happens, and we just get used to everything. And so I think it makes sense before we begin, especially for at that point, as much as one can, to be a bit smarter about it and to recognize that as we all have experiences, we don't need to go to the most extreme ends of luxury and whatever to realize that none of these material things will fulfill us, no matter how much we, kind of subconsciously may believe, because we can extrapolate these thoughts and see, yeah, after a while, that house would just be my house and these things would just be my things. And we go all the way before even that, and we look at what starts it all for most people is some sort of creative pursuit. Because even business, I would say here, for most, it will be in a sort of creative fashion, because you're not just going to be some, I don't know, build a concrete business or something like that, where that's much more kind of hardcore. For most people, it's not going to be that. It's going to be related to your interest, what you're passionate about, these things, at least ideally. And so I think we ought to extrapolate these thoughts of so that I do this so that I could, and go and really see them all to the end. Because I think what we'll find, and we never really do this, but what we find is what is best described, or one of the ways I've seen best described in the Alchemist book by Paulo Coelho, which is you eventually, where you start, you do all this trip, do all these things to realize that the treasure was where you started. That You had what you wanted in the beginning, but you just had to go through all this process to realize it. And what I mean by this is that if we extrapolate all this, and the person that is saying, I wish I could quit my job so that I could, and I'm going to use drawing as an example here, so that I could dedicate myself to drawing, so that I could get to a professional level, so that I could, become financially free, so that I could buy all these things. And instead of stopping there, and I ask you, okay, after all that, so that you could what? So that I could draw, so that I could do the thing. But what we must recognize that the thing is already accessible to us. And while we may want to get all these things and the money and all that, fair enough, nothing wrong with that. We must never lose track of why we're doing it. And we are doing it so that we can do it. In a lot of ways, the end leads to the beginning. It all connects. And I think this is what a lot of people, especially people that really are good artists and they've been good artists, and I'll use artists here as an example, since very young, and that they become professionals rather easily and rather quickly, and that they lose that sort of passion for it, and then they have to find it again later in life, because they have to realize that it's not about the money and the praise and even the perfection within the craft to that highest level, because no one can reach perfection. It is fundamentally about doing the thing and enjoying doing the thing. And we must never forget, no matter how ambitious we are, no matter how, because again, there's nothing wrong with that. But we must not forget that we're doing it so that we can do it.